Another day, another story. These celestial events, whether solar or lunar, influenced history. October 22, 2134 BC. Solar eclipse spells doom for Shi and Ho.
Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel.
One of the earliest records of an eclipse appears in the ancient Chinese document Shu Qing, Book of History, which describes a day on which the sun and moon did not meet harmoniously. Historians believe this is a reference to the solar eclipse of October 22, 2134 BC. The legend tells of two royal astronomers named Shi and Ho who had shirked their duties in order to get drunk. As a result, they failed to predict the event and were beheaded by the emperor. The historical legend of Shi and Ho, two ancient Chinese astronomers who, according to the traditional account, were executed for failing to predict a solar eclipse around October 22, 2134 BC. This event is often cited as one of the earliest recorded instances of astronomers. The story goes that Shi and Ho were appointed as official astronomers during the reign of Emperor Zhang Kong in the Xia dynasty. Their responsibility was to maintain an accurate calendar and predict celestial events, particularly solar and lunar eclipses, which were considered important omens in ancient Chinese culture. According to the legend, Shi and Ho failed to predict a solar eclipse, which was seen as a grave mistake since eclipses were thought to be indicators of the emperor's mandate and the overall well-being of the kingdom. Their failure to predict the eclipse was taken as a sign of their incompetence and negligence, and as a result, they were executed. It's worth noting that the historical accuracy of this event is debated among scholars. The earliest records of this story come from texts written much later than the supposed event itself, and there are differing accounts and interpretations of the actual details. The story might have been embellished or altered over time to serve various cultural and political purposes. Nevertheless, the legend of Shi and Ho remains an important part of the history of astronomy and astrology, highlighting the significance placed on celestial predictions in ancient societies and the potential consequences for those tasked with making these predictions. May 28, 585 BC. Solar eclipse inspires truce between the Lydians and the Medes. According to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, a total solar eclipse brought about an unexpected ceasefire between two warring nations, the Lydians and the Medes, who had been fighting for control of Anatolia for 5 years. During the Battle of Hales, also known as the Battle of the Eclipse, the sky suddenly turned dark as the sun disappeared behind the moon. Interpreting the inexplicable phenomenon as a sign that the gods wanted the conflict to end, the soldiers put down their weapons and negotiated a truce. The solar eclipse that occurred on May 28, 585 BC is a historical event with significant implications for the ancient Mediterranean world. This eclipse is often referred to as the eclipse of Thales, named after the Greek philosopher and mathematician Thales of Miletus, who is said to have predicted it. According to Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, the eclipse played a role in bringing about a truce between the warring Lydians and Medes, two powerful ancient civilizations in what is now modern-day Turkey and Iran. The Lydians, ruled by King Alyattes, were at war with the Medes, led by King Cyaxares. The war between the two kingdoms had been ongoing for years, and both sides were looking for a way to end the conflict. As the battle raged on, the solar eclipse occurred, darkening the skies and startling the soldiers. Herodotus recounts that the sudden darkness was interpreted by both sides as a sign from the gods, a divine intervention or warning. The eclipse was seen as an omen, and the opposing forces took it as a signal to stop fighting and pursue peace instead. The kings of both sides were reportedly influenced by this event and decided to negotiate a truce, ending the war. It's important to note that while the story of the eclipse of Thales and its influence on the truce is widely known, there are also debates and uncertainties surrounding its historical accuracy. The accounts come from sources written well after the events took place, and details might have been embellished or distorted over time. Nonetheless, the story of the eclipse of Thales and its role in inspiring a temporary cessation of hostilities between the Lydians and the Medes underscores the significance of celestial events in shaping the decisions and beliefs of ancient civilizations. August 27, 413 BC. Lunar eclipse plus superstition proved deadly for Athens. At the height of the Peloponnesian War, a decades-long struggle between Athens and Sparta, Athenian soldiers found themselves locked in a losing battle to expel the Syracusans from Sicily. Their commander, Nicias, ordered a temporary retreat. As the troops prepared to sail home, however, a lunar eclipse took place, prompting the highly superstitious Nicias to postpone the departure. The Syracusans took advantage of the delay to stage another attack, overcoming the Athenians and weakening their stronghold on the Mediterranean. According to many historians, the defeat in Sicily marked the beginning of the end of Athenian dominance. The event you're referring to took place during the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, and it is associated with the Athenian naval expedition to Sicily. While the exact date you mentioned, August 27, 413 BC, might not be precise due to the differences between the modern Gregorian calendar and the ancient Athenian calendar, the lunar eclipse you're talking about had significant consequences for the Athenian forces. In 415 BC, Athens launched a massive expedition to conquer the city-state of Syracuse in Sicily. This campaign was a major military endeavor, and the Athenians believed that a successful conquest of Syracuse would strengthen their position in the war against Sparta. However, the expedition ended in disaster for Athens. During the siege of Syracuse, a lunar eclipse occurred. The Athenian soldiers and commanders were already demoralized due to their inability to capture the city and the challenges they were facing. The lunar eclipse, a natural celestial event, was interpreted by the superstitious Athenians as a bad omen or a sign of divine displeasure. According to the historian Thucydides, who chronicled the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians were deeply affected by the eclipse. They saw it as a negative portent and believed that it was a sign that their campaign was doomed to fail. This superstitious interpretation added to their already deteriorating morale and contributed to the overall sense of defeatism. The Athenian expedition to Sicily ultimately ended in disaster. The Athenian fleet was defeated by the Syracusans and their Spartan allies, and a large portion of the Athenian forces was either killed or captured. The failed expedition had severe consequences for Athens, weakening its military and financial position in the ongoing war with Sparta. The story of the lunar eclipse during the Sicilian expedition highlights the intersection of military strategy, superstition, and historical events in ancient times. It serves as an example of how the interpretation of natural phenomena could have a tangible impact on the decisions and outcomes of historical events. May 5, 840, solar eclipse scares Louis the Pious to death. The third son of Charlemagne, Louis the Pious inherited a vast empire when his father died in 1814. His reign was marked by dynastic crises and fierce rivalry between his sons. A deeply religious man who earned his nickname by performing penance for his sins, Louis reportedly became terrified of an impending punishment from God after witnessing a solar eclipse. According to legend, he died of fright shortly thereafter, plunging his fractured kingdom into a civil war that ended with the historic Treaty of Verdun. February 29, 1504. Lunar eclipse saves Christopher Columbus from starvation. 12 years after his momentous landing at San Salvador, Christopher Columbus was exploring the Central American coast when woodworms attacked his ship, causing leaks and forcing him to make an emergency stop in Jamaica. He and his crew spent more than a year there awaiting relief. The indigenous people of the island welcomed the men, offering them food and shelter, but cut off their supplies when some of Columbus's crew members began stealing from them. Hoping to impress his hosts and regain their support, Columbus consulted the almanac he had brought with him and read about an upcoming total lunar eclipse. He told the Jamaicans that the gods were unhappy with them for failing to provide assistance and that they would show their disapproval by turning the moon a bloody red color. The eclipse occurred on schedule, and the astonished Jamaicans promised to resume feeding Columbus and his crew. August 7, 1869. Solar eclipse makes peace between scientists and native Alaskans. George Davidson, a prominent astronomer and explorer, had already made surveys of several regions in Alaska, then a relatively uncharted territory, when he set out on a scientific expedition to Chilkat Valley in 1869. He was warned, however, that the local Chilkat Indians had been angered by some American provocation and might welcome him with guns and spears rather than open arms. During a tense initial meeting on August 6, Davidson explained that he had come for purely scientific reasons, telling the Chilkat that he was especially anxious to observe a total eclipse of the sun the following day. Right on cue, the sky grew dark over the Chilkat Valley as the moon eclipsed the sun. Apparently dismayed by this frightening display, Some may have believed Davidson himself caused the eclipse. The Chilkat fled to the woods, leaving the scientists alone for the rest of their mission. Some historians believe the astronomer's prediction may have saved the entire team from attack. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.